Getting out of this hot debate that puts supporters of a New York mosque against those who believe the area around Ground Zero is sacred ground. Some are trying to block a 13-story mosque from construction. Is this intolerance, or is it a sign of the sensitivity of the family still grieving 9 years later? I want to debate the proper course now. Jordan Sekulow is a human rights attorney, director of international operations for the American Center for Law and Justice. Alan Reinach is executive director of the Church State Council. Gentlemen, good morning to both of you. You know it's a hot deal here in New York, and it's spreading across the country, and people are taking sides. Jordan, what should happen here?
Well, we have a situation here where the Landmark Preservation Commission, which is one of the panels in New York City that has to review this, hasn't even been following the right policies. That's why they've delayed their vote again on this building, which has been on their docket as a possible preservation building, as a landmark, since 1989, well before landing gear from one of the planes that struck the World Trade Center went through the building.
If they got, just so we know, make it clear, if they got that designation, it would be preserved and nothing could be built there, which would make this location your Ground Zero null and void. Continue.
So this is a major legal battle. We actually represent Tim Brown, who was one of 3 firefighters who survived when the Tower 1 collapsed at Ground Zero. So we're directly involved with the ACLJ in these hearings. But regardless of what the commission does next week, this battle is not over. There's other state review boards, city review boards, and federal review boards, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet, Bill, into the financing of this organization.
It sounds like a fight from your corner. Alan, what about it? What should happen here?
The Landmark Commission constitutionally cannot take religion into account when it determines the status of the building. And I know that Mr. Sekulow's organization has fought for decades against viewpoint discrimination. To exclude a religious group because of its viewpoint is discrimination.
This is about a historic building, a landmark, an organization with an imam who will not tell anyone where this money's coming from. He funded the flotilla into Gaza, the lynch mob against the Israeli soldiers. He was funding it. He has called the United States an accessory to the terrorism attacks of 9/11. We have to learn more about who this imam is. This is not about religious discrimination. These are religious discriminators. These are individuals who promote a radical version of Islam that should not be at Ground Zero.
Okay, what about that, Alan? If we got the answers, if we launched the investigation, you figured out where the money was coming from, would that satisfy you? Would you be okay with that?
The reason why so much of the New York political establishment, Mayor Bloomberg, Andrew Cuomo, is in support of this project is because the Cordova Institute wants to build on the model of Spain before the Inquisition, when Jews and Christians and Muslims lived together in peace.
They've already changed the name because it's so controversial, because that was a former church that was converted into a mosque in Spain. And the other thing here, the Landmark Preservation Commission, it's important for everyone to know, they landmarked a building where an explosion went off by the Weather Underground in Bill Ayers. That's a landmark in New York. There's 27,000 buildings that have been landmarked. Surely, if landing gear from one of the airplanes that hit the World Trade Center, this building should be landmarked as well. If a Weather Underground small bomb that goes off, if that's good enough to be a landmark.
Joe, what about those who argue this should be a symbol of American resilience, the way you bounce back, the way you live together, freedom of expression, freedom of religion?
Look into who's behind this mosque. And it's one imam who's called the U.S. an accessory.
If you got those answers, would you support it?
If he actually told us the information about where he's raising $100 million, which Saudi sheiks are paying for this, and sheiks in Qatar and the UAE, sure. But you know what happens, Bill? Every time you scratch the surface with major fundraisings by Muslims right now, and I think this is a problem in the Islamic community, when the money's coming internationally, it's coming from people linked to terrorism. That's why they don't want to disclose who's paying for this mosque.
Why not figure out those answers, Alan?
You know, there is a tendency to brandish all Muslims as somehow being implicated and associated with terrorism. You know, the American principle is that we stand for religious freedom, for including people of all faiths, and living together in peace. And my understanding is that's the kind of community center that these folks want to build. I certainly hope that Muslims have a place.
You haven't done your research into who these guys are, because these are bad guys funding the flotillas to Israel. They have a political agenda. It's not about peace, it's about domination.
I wanted to give Alan the last response. This will be continued. And gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for coming in today. Jordan Sekulow and Alan
We clearly need a
Right. The answer
we
is
need
not...
a place for Muslims to worship and meditate upon what happened there at Ground Zero, just as much as Jews and Christians and other Americans need to contemplate
That'll be
those
the
very
last
serious
word.
events.
We'll continue this debate. Thank you both, gentlemen. 18 minutes before the hour now. Martha.